Hello, once again, your friend Carl with another message to you from the Bible. And we want to take a look at the state of our nation right now and State of the Union. And many would think that everything's okay with the United States. But many there are that say we're not okay as a nation. And the truth is that our nation is divided. And if so, then we are not okay as a nation because we are not united. And if we are not united, we are not a nation and no longer have any statehood under God, because how can both sides divided believe that God is on their side? And for a truth, this is how it was during the Civil War days. Before the war started, both sides believed that they were in the right and that God was on their side. And this was preached in the churches back then, both in the North and the South. And so it was an unfortunate situation that God's church found itself in. And they couldn't seem to come together and resolve this issue, churches in the North and churches in the South, both believing in the same God, Jesus Christ, and yet both believing that he was on their side. Now, how could that be? And but this is how man's attitude is towards everyone in God's nation being destroyed. Now, we may not think of it that way, but if a nation is divided, then it's going to be conquered. Now, there is political division, of course, in our nation, and so there was in God's nation of ancient Israel. And it did not matter whose side you were on, because ancient Israel was attacked and all its people led away as slaves to Babylon. So this is none other than the work of Satan, who wants to divide and conquer. And this is what he did with God's nation, ancient Israel. And it's just a sad story. And now, ancient Israel, of course, was divided. And so there's a lot of metaphors and analogies that can be drawn from this that relate to God's nation today, United States of America. And the division is the primary situation that led to God's nation be destroyed back then, and so it is today. Everybody knows this. A nation divided cannot stand, and yet we will remain divided and find no middle ground. And just as it was in God's day, two tribes in the south. Let's take a look at it. The nation divided. Now there was 12 tribes of Israel, of course, and 10 tribes ruled by Jeroboam, king. In the north, Israel with his 10 tribes, and then Judah down south with 2 tribes with Rehoboam as the king. And so there was a division, and just as there is today in God's nation, United States of America. And God never intended it to be this way. So how did this happen? Well, Satan is a trickster and a deceiver, and he can make people in God's nation divided amongst themselves and be split. And now you don't see a split necessarily among two kingdoms in our nation today. You have states, of course, but you don't have a division as it was back during the days of the Civil War, where between the North and the South. And actually, there almost was a civil war in ancient Israel, wanting both to reunite as one, and one overtaking the other. But God stepped in and told them not to kill your brother, okay? And so to stay divided. Even though both nations would fall, it would be less tragic on the people of those two kingdoms, in being that they wouldn't have to go to war against their own countrymen. Not only that, but that God's nation would, even split, would last longer between the two kingdoms than it would have been had they went into civil war, and which would have greatly weakened their nation. And I mean, the idea is that in a civil war is that you would kill as many as you could on the other side, and where they'd have to give up. And God did not want this, because how long would that war have gone on? And so God is all knowledge and wisdom, and so his doing is always correct, his wisdom advice. And so we see that both sides were corrupt in Jeremiah 3:8. And I saw, when for all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah in the south feared not, but went and played the harlot also. So apostasy came upon both kingdoms, the north and south, and both fell eventually. And a divided nation will not stand, and just as it is in this country today. Did ancient Judah have to be conquered, Jerusalem destroyed, and its people led away captive into Babylon? Does the United States of America have to be conquered from within, and God's people made to suffer at the hands of a cruel dictator? And so we have to understand that the nation divided, Israel and Judah, fell because all the kings did evil in the sight of the Lord. It was national apostasy on both sides. Satan had deceived both Judah and Israel, and he won a big victory when the final kingdom of Judah fell at the hands of Babylon, and its citizens were led away captive and slaves, leaving their home. And it was just a terrible defeat for God's people, and a major battle and victory won for Satan, because God's nation was supposed to be the dominant nation in the world. And it was back then. King Solomon had the entire world. And remember, people, kings and princes and queens were coming to him and bearing gifts, as he was the greatest. He had the world. He was the ruler of the world back then. And so this was God's intent, but not to really bring nations into submission, but to have them come to the knowledge of the true God, as these other nations were, of course, Gentile nations, and their gods were, of course, pagan, and they weren't serving the true God. So this was God's intent for the world back then and today. But unfortunately, we find ourselves in a similar situation where our nation is on the verge, well, not on the verge of collapse, but it has fallen into the hands of, from within. And so, but what is the attitude of both sides in this nation? Would they rather both the nation fall and that nobody wins? But we are truly, as a nation, divided and deceived that this is the right course of action to take when we could see the results that it is not truly. And we have wars all over the world today, and we have open borders and people coming into this nation killing God's people. And so how can that be justified in the sight of God? It cannot. And so think on these things, and gotta really examine where we're at today, because we are living in the last days, in the end days of this nation, where the first beast came already in Revelation 13:5. The second beast is upon us and ready to come, I believe, in this next election. And it will be troubled times for God's people. And I believe that second beast of Revelation 13:11, as Jesus Christ says, the mark of the beast will be coming, and if you don't serve this beast, then you will be either put in prison or killed. And of course, this evil entity will force its will on God's people and try to make them submit by financially ruining them, and with a law that says that they cannot buy or sell unless they worship this beast. And so this is going to be a very troubled time for God's people, and I believe it's going to happen quick. But because this evil entity will not be able to make those people bow, God's people who will stand firm on their faith and not worship the beast, just like as it was in the days of Babylon. Remember King Nebuchadnezzar and his statue? He wanted all Israelites to bow down to his God, and to him, bow down to man and his image. And those three men would not bow. Even though the king gave them a second chance. I'll give you a second chance. Maybe you didn't hear or something. And then they stood up. And so they were cast into the furnace. We all know that story. And they were unscathed, and they came out. And this had an effect on the king, and who witnessed the power of their God. And so we have to remember that we are living in a modern day Babylon, in which I believe is Washington, D.C., because those edicts and laws against God's people come from there, and they want to make the world, we're not just talking about this nation, but the world. If you read Revelation 13:11, that second beast, take a look at it, 11 to 18, and there's no mistake. So you have to understand, and that it really doesn't matter which side, Republican or Democrat, you're on. You say you believe in Jesus, well, then you should not bow down to this beast or receive his number. If you do, I'm sorry, but you're going to be excluded from God's book of life. And actually, you can say you're a child of God, but let your works prove that you are, and do not take this number 666 as Jesus says not to. But his people will not take this number. So remember that, and you can give up your party affiliation, and that's okay with God. And you can make your affiliation with Jesus Christ and his word, which stands true even to this day. The words of his words in Revelation were penned 2,000 years ago, and Jesus knowing the beginning from the end, and so he wants you to be saved. And of course he wanted his nation to be spared, but this is not going to be the case, and he will bring many out in this nation and the world who will not bow down to the beast. So a climax is coming, and where God's people will have to stand, or many will be thrown in prison, and many will be killed as well. So this is how it's going to have to be until people will be awakened to the truth of God's people standing up for him in the Bible. So take this stand with God, Jesus Christ, and come out of her, as Jesus says, my people, and be ye not partakers of her sins, or receive of her plagues. And this we pray in God's name, amen. And so until next time, is your friend Carl. God richly bless you. Thank you.